And so I'll just quickly ask each of you to go down the line and give a quick introduction. So Colette, I'll start with you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Colette Lamontagne from National Grid, and I work in one of our many innovation teams, but I'm in our corporate development team, so we support the U.S. regulated business, the U.K. regulated business, and our non-reg business, and help to connect all the different innovation teams together and make sure that we have a holistic view across the company.
My name is Kumar. I'm an executive VP at Hansen Technologies. Hansen Technologies is a software company which specializes on billing and customer service software across 3 different industries, which is energy and other utilities, pay TV, and telecom. So one of the interesting things of working there is that we talk a lot about customer experience and how, for want of a better word, utilities are not exactly at the cutting edge of technology on that forefront. However, telecom certainly is. And therefore, we have the advantage of being able to share the information inside the company. So we have a lot of expertise, which I've certainly, I came from the energy side of the business, and so I've certainly learned a lot from them. And hopefully I can share some of that with you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carl Popham. Anyone here enjoy lights, air conditioning? Have you plugged your phone into an outlet in the last 72 hours here in Austin? That's what we do. You're welcome. Pretty nice, huh? Also, this cool air, this is on our chilled loop. So we have units that basically make ice at night. When energy is cheap and abundant, generally overabundance of wind, and then we melt that ice during the day, so you are actually breathing in 12-hour-old ice on a chilled loop system. Very efficient, very awesome. So I've been with utility 13 years. Last 7 is I was able to launch and currently the manager of electric vehicles and emerging technologies. So for today, anything EV y'all want to chat about, fantastic. And on the emerging tech side, we deal with all kinds of stuff. Our biggest program is an integration of PV, solar, and storage called Shines.
Thanks. So at Z Prime, we do a lot of research. We talk to a lot of utilities, survey utilities, and one of the things that we hear over and over again is how utilities are collecting all this new data, but that their organizations are very siloed and they're not quite sure how to share it across the organization and really best utilize it. So Colette, I'll start with you. Could you talk a little bit about how your organization is addressing the massive amounts of data that you're collecting?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's 2 points to that, the massive amounts of data and then how do we share it. We have a lot of data and it is siloed because we have service territory in Massachusetts and in New York and in Rhode Island. And National Grid is a compilation of many utilities. So they had different systems at the time. So getting those all together is one issue. But we do not have AMI yet, except for 2 different pilots. So we don't have as much as we could have in a couple of years. And so we're trying to set the stage for that when the time comes and to be ready to handle all the extra data that's coming in and how can we do that holistically. But one of the ways that we're trying to deal with the silos is, for example, I'm in corporate development in our disruptive innovation team, and so we support all of the different teams and we work across. So that's one way to work across the silos. Also, our customer team in the US is one team for all our service territories. So even though we have people in Massachusetts, New York, and Rhode Island, they're all reporting up to one person ultimately that's in charge of customers, so we're sharing that way.
And Carl, what about Austin Energy?
Well, let me start with kind of a story, and because I think there's a big difference between data and information. And you need to handle those differently. So at age 19, one of my first real job was an intelligence analyst, military intelligence analyst for the US Army. And we would get volumes and volumes of data would come at the analyst, and your job was to pick amongst all these swarms under 6 categories. So some might be imagery, we were looking at satellite imagery, some might be an interrogation, so that's called human, and you have all these different sources, and then you come up with information. I care a lot less in my role now about data than I do information. Is it actionable? Is it something I can do with? I get pitched more about data, and let's increase the granularity. Let's go from 15-minute to we can do 5-minute intervals, and we have some part we can get to 1 minute and subsect. So we are awash of data. And so I guess what I'm trying to get to is information, and I think how we've tackled it. So previous in this role, I used to love the data question because I was in the IT side of the house, including being the chief information officer for a while, and we loved talking about enterprise service buses and data architecture because that's what IT people like. Well, I'm not in IT anymore. I'm in the business side. And we don't care about that. That's just stuff and bits and bytes. So I'm sorry if I'm insulting fellow IT people, recovering IT folks like myself, is we don't care. Make it work, and we want the information. So how we've tackled it. I think one of the best things is organizationally is launching a group to really tackle that for the business, and it's called Data Analytics and Business Intelligence. And I think I saw the manager of that group floating around, Dr. Liz, right back there. She's raising her hand. So if you want to know how that is being addressed at the utility, it's more about business units who are embedded in the business, giving real information to folks like myself, so we get great information about our customers and prospective customers through things like Tapestry and other programs, working with a team like that. That is my intelligence analyst group, if you will, and I'm the commander who's getting real-time battlefield information so I can make strategic and tactical decisions about it. So I would really look at those two things, and having an organization to focus on that part of the equation and looking at from the business perspective and not the IT perspective is, I would say, the roadmap to success.
So utilities have this large amount of historical data as well that they've collected over time, but it wasn't collected to be used in the ways we're trying to use it now, today. So Kumar, a question for you is, what are some of the challenges in taking legacy data and making it useful?
Yeah. Well, actually, there are two kinds.
Hey, I brought slides. You're going to get an intervention, but please finish your.
No. I mean, you want
there.
to take the slides first? I was enjoying your introduction, so.
Well, all right, because obviously I just completely deeply because this came up, and that's kind of so that's how I was going to start this conversation, y'all, with a question about y'all. So who here is from Austin? All right, so just the Austinites, what's the worst thing about living in Austin? Yeah, yes, that's true. It's off the hook. Everyone hates your traffic. I'm sure other people from cities kind of have that same thing. So when we talk about data and information, my point here is when you're looking at your strategic objectives, whether you're a battlefield commander and destroying the enemy, or your utility or city trying to address your customers' concerns, is the information to support what you're trying to do. So we know our citizens, they hate traffic. What else do we know? This is the #1 people commute today. And it's the most inefficient, ridiculous cost benefit known to mankind is the personal vehicle. It's parked 95% of the time. You're not even using it. And you're expecting to have your car and your little spot, and you get out, and then you go to work in your own lane, and then you have to have a spot there, and then it's parked, and then you go in. I mean, if you do an engineering equation, so we know this is ridiculous as well. And specifically in Austin, and this number is outdated, we're up to about 130 new people a day. We also have about the same amount as people as cars registered in our 2-county region. So about 1 to 1. So this is about what 110 people look like on traffic. This is added to your roadways every day, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You think we're going to pave our way out of this using last century's? No way. It's ridiculous. So also, anyone seen some e-scooters going around town? So a lot of times you look at data, you say, what did it look like last year? So we got a huge spike. I mean, even 300,000 miles in trips, because average trips at 1 mile, so you can almost interchange what an e-scooter ride is. Cruising around 300, which is the most ridiculous amount of adoption of anything transportation related, according to my professionals in the transportation business. And then we get a huge, ridiculous spike like that. You want to know we got a huge spike last month? Huh? South by Southwest. Yeah, anyone see the pile of scooters the cops piled up on 6th Street went viral? Just as a whip. Yeah, so the cop, you had these no no load zones or no driving zones, so they're just picking them up like cotton candy. And then they made a pile, and then there was an Austin police officer doing like this funny thumbs up in front of the Alamo Draft House, and this picture went viral. So we have this weird love-hate relationship. But when you look at the fact is, we all hate the transportation here. It's expensive, very inefficient, a single car. So it's ripe for disruption. So of course these things are going to take off, and they're not going away because, as we looked earlier. Also EVs. So we've been clipping along here in Austin around 150 or so EVs a month. And then you see that huge spike there. You want to know why we got a huge spike recently? That's just one vehicle. That's the Tesla 3 right there. And so we're going to continue to see that growth, and we have so many cool vehicles on the roadmap there. We are definitely seeing the spike there. And I think this is my last data slide. ERCOT, which manages the electric grid in Texas, believes there's going to be about 3 million EVs in Texas by 2033. And so what does that mean to Austin? So in Austin, that's about 600,000 if we maintain our market share, because they're hub based. We're not right now about 23% of the Texas EV market. So that even just staying at 20%, that's about 240 million a year in new revenue each and every year and growing. And our revenue, our profits go back into the city. So that's not a bad thing to capture away from the Exxons and whatnot of the world and put it into the local pocket that gets transferred as your city-owned municipal utility. And that's a pretty picture. All right, there you go. Those are my data points.
Thank you for that. So I'll just go back to the question,
Yeah.
taking challenges to using, making this.
Yeah, so how can you make that work?
This is just not fair. I mean, how am I going to talk about legacy data after a speech like that?
So unfair.
I want to start off saying that there are actually two challenges when you're talking about legacy anything. I mean, there's the legacy data, which is essentially old data from a long time ago, so to speak, and legacy systems, which are actually holding current data. And so, I mean, and they're actually, frankly, let me take the easy one first, which is legacy data. If you remember, the things like typical customer information, etc., whenever you move systems, get moved over, it's the historical usage and related information that is often left behind. Starting around 2008, when the federal government just handed out a ton of money as part of Obama grant, otherwise known as SGIG, Smart Grid Initiative grants, a lot of the utilities rushed ahead and got matching funds and installed AMI and smart meters all over the country. About $4 billion worth of smart meters are installed, which was great because, in fact, I was talking to various people at that time. At that time, nobody really thought of how to collect the data and what to do with the data. It was basically, let's install the hardware. And also at that point, there was the plan was to have a second tranche of grants coming through, adding up to about three or four tranches, adding up to about 20 billion, but the second and third tranches never appeared. They never materialized. So in fact, there was one, I remember talking to one utility sometime in 2009 when they were in the middle of installing 500,000 smart meters. They said, no, we don't want to collect the data. I mean, it's remote, turn on, turn off. That's all we want. This way I don't have to roll a truck. Data, who cares? That was one set of people. And then subsequently after that, so because of those financial issues, a lot of them were not collecting the data. And in the last few years, starting around probably 2012, 13, many of them started actually collecting the data. And they were basically using, at that point, they were using essentially legacy applications to store them. So they were storing them in blobs and things like that, but with no intelligent, smart, validate, edit, or estimate algorithms, etc. In other words, it was just a pile of data that somebody picked up and threw it over there. Far from intelligence, did you call that? Or even farther from wisdom? Because you have to go through various stages for you to be able to use the data. So that was the bad news about old data. But here's the good news, it doesn't really matter. Because if you look at the last 3 years of electric usage data, generation data, etc., things have changed so dramatically the profiles have changed dramatically because of the evolution of solar and renewable sources and people's behavior, consumption patterns changing so much. And, and Google and Microsoft are determined to put an operating system in every cereal box. So, so things have changed so much that that very old information is simply not particularly valuable. In fact, when we have run simulations in terms of trying to figure out whether you should resurrect all that data, clean it up, and marry it up with external information like customer information or geographic information, get it ready for analysis, and we basically looked at it, and its value is fairly limited. So that brings us to the second problem, which is the current data, the data that you're gathering today, is going into the legacy systems. Now that, of course, means that it's not easy to get it out either. And those systems have their own problems. And if you look at some of the newer constructs, things like net metering, things like community solar, et cetera, the data that is coming out of those systems, the old systems, the data is new, the meters are new, AMI is new. The systems they're going into are, very often from the late 90s, if not older. In fact, last week I was at a conference called CS Week, Customer Service Week, and one of the questions I throw to everybody who comes by, I run into, is when did the current billing and CIS system go into production where you are? And the oldest one was 1978. And that was before every one of my programmers was born. So that is the bigger challenge in terms of, what some of the things that we've been working on is effectively building systems around those which can actually grab all the information and bring some cleanliness and orderliness and standardization to it so that you can actually start looking at it and beginning to turn it into intelligence. And all of that is fairly new, has been happening in the last year and a half. And in fact, we've done some work recently with a large utility up in Minnesota, and that's exactly what we did. So people call it microarchitecture and all. I prefer the word Santa and the elves, which is leave the big Santa called CIS alone and buy more elves and put them around him.
And Colette, so at National Grid, do you have any innovative programs or services sort of new that are allowing you to collect new types of data, and how are you using that?
So we're not just looking at AMI for data, we're looking at trying to reach out to the customer and get that two-way street going. So we have a couple of different approaches we're taking. One of them is our customer council, which is a really interesting survey technique, I guess. It's a group of about 6,000 residential and commercial industrial customers that have agreed to be part of this council, and so we can interact with them on a regular basis. I think we do something every 2 weeks, and it can be an email sent out to them. It could be something that they just do thumbs up, thumbs down, they like it, they don't like it. It could be a challenge, or not a challenge, but a place where we ask them to submit ideas on a certain topic. We ask for their opinions on different things, and we change the topic up on a regular basis. And that has been really, really helpful for us in understanding what the customers really like and being able to pivot and what we were going to provide as services, but also the different segments we've been looking at. And that's the second thing we did is this year we undertook a huge study to look at customer segmentation, to modernize or update the segmentation we had before and think about it in terms of the different types of customers we have and how we can target products that they're most interested in to them, which makes it more efficient on our end, but it also makes it more efficient on their end because they don't want to see, flyers in their bills of things they're not interested in. And so we're just sending them things that we think would actually be of interest.
And Carl, we saw your slide about the big spike in the scooters there. So what kind of feedback and data are you actually collecting from the e-scooters or other different programs that Austin Energy is offering?
Well, on the e-scooters, so the lead as far as the data aggregator there is our colleagues at Austin Transportation Department. They have an excellent website that shows how many trips the average roughly mile per trip, number of 311 related calls. Here's what I'm learning. And there's a group I'm working with called City E-Lab, something like that. And they're getting ready to launch a pretty awesome 110-page toolkit of how cities can work on best practices when scooters come to your town, if they're not already there. And here's what I've learned, is they're coming. They're divisive. People love them or hate them. Who here loves electric scooters? And was taking one a little bit. Raise your hand. All right, so quite a few. Who hates them? They find them annoying and why they're buzzing around there. You know. Yeah. That's kind of what we found. So the city of Austin has worked with the CDC on safety issues along with local hospitals. So they're going to do a report on that. And I've listened to a lot of stakeholders on what they don't like about the scooters. And so with scooters, so we're collecting a lot of data from advocates, company groups, and to keep in mind on the history. So when you look on the date when scooters first came to Austin, there was a process underway which had stakeholder engagement involvement and what are we going to do and how we're going to regulate and permit and all that stuff. Well, you had a company called Bird. I'll just give them the shout out or whatever you want to call it. They were tired of waiting, so they unloaded 250 birds at midnight in downtown Austin, turned on the app. Let's see what happens. So there was a flurry of activity at Transportation Department. Council had to pass emergency resolutions around allowing ATD to pick them up on the road and confiscate them, but as well as to fast track a permitting process. So the strategy ATD and the city took was, we know people are frustrated. Our job is to go out and try to squash new ways of getting around. So they really want is the route of how quickly can we enable this and let all the people who've been waiting and playing nice so competition can kind of help. So that's kind of how they launch. So whether you like them or not, they'll probably come into your town. It's just kind of the disruptive nature of these businesses. So now it's generally around safety. So one thing our company did and our team launched was an e-scooter safety demonstration. 50% of all accidents happen the very first time you take a ride. 40% of the accidents involve a hit to the head. So anyone who came to our training, one is they got a very safe place to get that first ride, and you got a free helmet by coming up to the training, just to educate our own employees of how to safely operate this new mobility device. So that's one thing employers, anyone can do that, have a safety day. We also had a local first responder. We had police as well as EMS talk about the kind of accident at the scene, and police talk about what the rules really are. The short answer, there isn't a lot of rules on them. You can do really whatever you want. You can ride where you want. You can go on the sidewalks and whatnot. Now, if you hit someone, you can be liable for it, but you're not going to get ticketed by riding them where they are because according to our detective with APD, the rules just don't exist yet. So you're seeing a lot of new best practices around dismount zones. So with that data from CDC is what are the most accident-prone intersections, and you'll see dismount zones. You also have people who, they want some peace and quiet either in their local park or maybe in front of their house of worship. So you might see some kind of respectful dismount zones of these scooters around basically on feedback for that. So really the focus is on safety, and it's on kind of playing nice with others. It's also, the last 1%, so when you look at autonomous vehicles, we're about 90% there. That was very hard. To go from 90% to 99% correct is 100 times harder. To go 99 to that 1% is going to be another 100 times harder. The biggest hang up right now in the AI technology is bicycles, how they do the roads and zoom out. I'm going to tell you right now, scooters are going to blow bicycles out of the water as far as confusing AI, just as a driver, how I've seen it. So that's one example of these scooters, and I'm going to give a plug to my colleague who's here. She's going to talk about how we're using spatial data and data in our EV program. So that's Lindsay. I thought I saw your smiling face. Oh, there she is right there. You can raise your hand, Lindsay, for a second. So tomorrow she is on a panel on how we're using data in our EV programs. We'll do a deep dive on that. It's awesome. I encourage you to check that out.
So again, here we're on the track Feel the Love. We want everyone to feel included when it comes to energy. So Colette, I'll start with you and then maybe we can go down the line here. But how can we ensure that we're using data and to positively impact especially younger generations when it comes to energy?
I think that's where the customer segmentation study came in. We're really trying to understand the population better and understand the different needs and desires. Because you can't just say, all the millennials like this and all the senior citizens like that, because there is a mix. And we've done a really good job of looking at the different ways they can cross over. And so that's one of our big efforts to understand that. And in doing this study, I think see if I can get the statistics right. In 10 years, 3 million millennials will be replacing the 2 million senior citizens who are going to be, not as active in bill payers and such. So we have to start to think about who is our customer base going to be in 10 years, and what do we want to do to prepare for that and to be able to serve them and what they're looking for.
Having a 19-year-old son whose political opinions are fairly conservative, but he is very much for green energy and what would typically you would identify as liberal views. The younger generation certainly is much more conscious about climate change, and as he once explained to me, in 50 years you may not be alive, but I have to be. So, so they're very much conscious of that, and therefore it's important to appeal to that end of that particular feeling that they have, that this is something. Some of the effects of climate change, for example, they are going to see in their lifetime, and they know it. And so in order to engage them, that is one easy hook, if you like, for want of a better word, in terms of, if you make positive change, if you make changes to affect the climate change and related issues and pollution and everything else, much more, if you actually address those issues and try to do something about them, then the younger generation would definitely be interested. You will catch their interest, and they will listen to you. And you may tell them other things too, but that'll certainly catch their attention.
I think the utility is well positioned, especially a community-owned utility like Austin Energy, to lead in this front. Anyone notice on the panel of leaders on the left side ETS there was a dinosaur face? Does anyone know who that dinosaur is? It was also listed as a keynote speaker in front. That's Stevie, big E, big B, the EV-loving T-Rex. It's my personal team's mascot. Stevie does a lot of outreach. Kids love Stevie. So that's even part of how we brand ourselves, is having something friendly, social media savvy and friendly, to reach out to younger generation. They get a photo with Stevie, and then, well, what Stevie's kind of do. So you have, that aspect. We're also the biggest sponsors of Science Fest, so we can kind of influence that. We do a lot of outreach, but I'll kind of end on a real kind of highlight. And there was just a press release a few days ago. This particular program is called EVs for Schools, so you can't get more next generational than that. And just got announced, just won 2 awards. Fast Company gave EVs for Schools, the Austin EVs for School program, one of the top innovative global ideas for 2019, where we're happy to get that, and it got a Smart 50 award for 50 cool projects in cities throughout the year. So what is it? It is targeting this exact question. So it's 6 through 12, and I think, I'm just doing an advert for my team here. Amy, you're back there, right? Okay, Amy Atch's right there. She's the project lead for this. Raise your hand. So here's what happens. When I say, right, they all raise it, by the way, but they do this. So y'all turn back and you think I'm just like talking to goats. No, you have to keep it up for a second. Amy, that's how it works. And so what EVs for Schools does is it's charging stations for the teachers and staff, for the teachers who teach the kids. It's beautiful curriculum developed by a very pro company called EcoRise. I'll give them a plug because I think they deserve it, because the curriculum is beautiful, about sustainable transportation. We launched it first with 4 pilot schools in Austin Independent School District. The schools were handpicked based on also having a high population of low-income students, because we want to make this accessible, equitable. It's not Tesla's for the rich. It's really something you can understand when you go home. You can talk to your parents about. This is for you too. And it also treats a charging station as a science-based training aid where they can run a hypothesis and kind of look at it. So it's all this kind of cool stuff. So we're right in the middle of training the trainers right now. The kids will start receiving the curriculum in weeks. We've already had plans to roll it out to other schools and other school districts, as well as districts throughout the U.S. have already asked to replicate that. We're making that curriculum as open source as possible. So it's basically free to the other schools, or if they want to customize it, they can. because it's not about just solving it for us and our idea. We wanted to launch it, and every good idea needs friends. So by all means, feel free to be a friend with that idea. So that one might be one of my favorite kind of cool things. And Stevie was there too. So you had Stevie, you had the engineering class, and you also had the cheerleaders all celebrating EVs at a ribbon cutting event, getting together and just making it cool, and just seeing the kids talk about, and the EVs were there and Stevie, and it's just that kind of thought process where, yeah, if we cannot engage at that level, we've failed as a community-owned utility, in my opinion, and that's just one way I think we're leveraging our role since 1895. You know, we launched in 1895, we've been doing it for a while, our role in the community.
And I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but there might be a surprise appearance by Stevie at some point during this event.
Yeah, a lot of people thought it was an April Fool's joke because they posted Stevie as a top line speaker on April 1. But no, Stevie's actually here. You may get a Stevie sighting. You may or may not. Stevie is elusive.
So we have 5 minutes left, so I just wanted to, at this point, open it up to questions from the audience. Anyone have questions for our panelists? Oh, somebody? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, everyone around you is pointing to you. You're just like my team. They do the quick, they're like, I didn't do anything.
I love the program that you talked about, which is the EVs for schools, and really exciting that that's open source. So I'd be curious, is there a website where we can go to learn more? Can you give us the name of the website?
Well, certainly. So all of our programs that I announced is on pluginaustin.com. So you can see a lot of our programs there, to include a blurb on EVs for schools posted. Yep, Amy's giving the nod yet. But we have a lot of, you can see Stevie videos, Stevie, the life in the day of Stevie. Stevie plays in a band, is also a scientist, and his best friend is breaking up with their girlfriend. And so you can see all the story of Stevie. We also have EVs and green building programs, our $417 unlimited fueling a month, rebates if you want to do home charging, workplace charging. Really, almost anything and everything EV utility related you can get at our team's website, pluginaustin.com, and you'll be completely up in the know what's going on in Austin. So that was a great question. You just allowed me to plug my team's website, pluginaustin.com. Go there now. Yes. I also post a lot of our daily stuff on my LinkedIn, so if you connect with LinkedIn, I try to keep everyone updated with that, and we have other social media outlets as well that we try to keep people updated with.
Any other questions? All right. Well, we've got about 15 minutes between this session and the next session, so thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you. Our panelists will be around the rest of the afternoon, so feel free to connect with them during the networking sessions and enjoy the afternoon panels.